Welcome, everyone. I'm going to give a few seconds for people to join and enter the webinar from the waiting area. Thank you for joining us. It's always great to talk to you on a weekly basis every Thursday. And today I'm particularly excited to be joined by Dr. Rosenfeld from Loma Linda University. So without further ado, I will let Dr. Rosenfeld introduce himself and his team.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sabrina, and Merit's joining us now too, so that's very nice. And thank you very much to the organizing group for inviting me. This is really an honor, and I've known about this webinar, but haven't had the chance to block the time, so you gave me a great excuse to block the time, and I appreciate it. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So as Sabrina said, my name is Jeffrey Rosenfeld, and I'm a professor of neurology here at Loma Linda, which, if you're not aware, is in Southern California. So hopefully you're all having nice weather, but we always have nice weather here. So it's, I don't like to brag, but it's probably nice in Boston also, but it's especially sunny and very pleasant here today. So what I thought I would do is just take 1 or 2 minutes and tell you about myself and our program here, because it is a little unique, the program in general for ALS patients, and then also spend the rest of a few minutes talking about the trial itself and how we are involved in the trial. So I have been a neurologist for just under 30 years. I know I look young, 28 years about. And throughout most all of that time, I've taken care of ALS patients and participated in clinical trials with ALS. The kind of program we have here, I'm very fortunate because it's a kind of a unique clinical program. I actually came here to Loma Linda to start this program because I had started a similar program at other places in the country earlier in my career. And what makes it unique is it is very intensely multidisciplinary, similar to programs that you might be involved in. The unique part is the multidisciplinary team here at Loma Linda is a full-time team. So whereas in many clinic programs, the therapist will come together on the day of a clinic, and then on other days, they go back and do their respective jobs in the hospital or in the clinic. In our program, our team is full-time in the center. And so they're here every day. They interact with each other every day, and they interact with our patients every day. We have organized follow-up clinics, but in between those follow-up clinics, those same therapists are doing their therapeutic interventions in between. So the advantage for most of our patients is that it's very accessible because it's the same person every day and they can reach them. And if I'm hard to find, they can find me. So they connect with any one of a number of our team members, and they can get to me or they can get to anybody on the team readily because they're always here. So we call this program here at Loma Linda the Center for Restorative Neurology. And that was just, they wanted to distinguish it from other rehab services that are on campus. But it's worked out very well, I think, for our patients, I hope. Can I see the next slide, please? And I'll introduce quickly, this is the team from the Restorative Neurology Center. We have all of the disciplines that are probably represented in programs that you might be familiar with. We have a dietitian. Next to myself is Kelly Davis, a dietitian. Andrea Fritsch is our respiratory therapist. Elizabeth is our scheduler and navigator. Melissa Harris is our psychotherapist and counselor. Joyce Cody is occupational therapy. The gentleman with the white coat behind Joyce is Karthik Bhuvaneswaran. He was our fellow, neuromuscular fellow up until today, actually, and his fellowship just ended because that was last year. Celia Ma is our speech and language pathologist, and Payman Nasarai is a very experienced physical therapist. So we're standing in the space there that is part of the physical therapy space, but we actually have these spaces. We have a physical therapy gym, an occupational therapy area, an area for speech and language pathology, an area for counseling, an area for nutrition, for respiratory, and it's built into the neurology practice. So we actually are embedded here in the department. So it's a bit of a unique program. I can speak more to it if there are specific questions, but folks that participate in our research programs, all of our trials, we don't make a big distinction between this is a research day versus this is a clinic day, because we look at research very much as part of our therapeutic modalities. Some patients are more interested than others, but nonetheless, it's offered to all eligible patients. So there are very many times that there'll be in a clinic interaction, and our research coordinators will take some of the time from the clinic day just to talk about a trial. And if they have to come back later for enrollments or such, they can, but it's very integrated. And that comes from the fact that we're all located in the same space under the same roof, and we're able to be that kind of fluid between the research and the clinic program. So I'm very proud that that's worked out for us and set that up. My own area of focused research interest, and especially as it relates to platform trial, I've been interested in what we call heterogeneity of the disease. I've always been struck by how different patients appear that have forms of ALS. So a lot of my research activities on my own have been looking for ways to distinguish one form of ALS from another, whether it's a biomarker distinction or a clinical distinction. So we're always looking to try to improve upon clinical trials by taking into account the heterogeneity of the disease. So the platform trial I'll speak about in a moment, but I think there's one more slide after this for myself. This is our research team relevant to the platform trial. Josie Sedano is our research coordinator who handles most all of the activities in the platform trial. So if you were to call to be interested in the trial, Josie would be the one you would speak to. David Borg is a research manager, so he oversees this trial and some others, and Imran Kusam, Syed's his formal name, was a former research manager. He's actually moving to another position this week, so we're in transition there. And Shiba Baroya is our regulatory specialist. So these four individuals, and there's actually several other coordinators in the department who handle other kinds of trials, but nonetheless, these four individuals have been most involved. If any of you on the call had spoken to our center about participation, you undoubtedly would have already spoken to one of these people. I just want to make a mention before I stop speaking about the platform trial. I'm sure all of you are in some ways interested, or you wouldn't be tuning into this webinar, but the platform trial really offered us and everybody that participated in it a very unique opportunity to do things a little differently. One of the most frustrating things about being an ALS neurologist is we have tested so many great ideas over the years, so many ideas that looked like they should work, especially from early laboratory and preclinical data, and only to find out that despite very good efforts, very well-run trials, a lot of effort, a lot of patient participation, they didn't work. They didn't prove statistical significance. So it's been my contention and shared by many of my colleagues that we have to find a better way to do this. We need what's called in science a paradigm shift, something a kind of out of the box way of thinking about clinical trials. Well, there are many out of the box ways of thinking about clinical trials. The platform trial is one of them. And what makes it most different is that we're able to test multiple compounds at the same time using the same protocol. So it's an efficient way to find an answer as to whether a drug works over a shorter period of time. So I'm sure that Sabrina or Merit will be discussing this a little bit more in terms of the logistics of it. But essentially, when you enter into the platform trial, you're offered one of however many drugs are being offered at that time. You are randomized or put into a group for the drug testing. And the protocol that we're using to test these drugs is the same regardless of the mechanism or the route of administration. So it's almost like a race. You can see which compound is doing better in the population relevant to the others over time. And most importantly, we should get to an answer. If any of these drugs are optimally effective, we should know that years earlier than we would have known it had we tested them individually, one at a time. So we've been very pleased with the efficiency, or the potential efficiency to get to an answer faster. And so we enthusiastically participated in the platform trial. It's in some ways, it's more complicated. It sounds like it should be easier. It's a more complicated trial than a regular trial, but the complication comes on our side, not on your side. From the patient's point of view, it's fairly straightforward. The protocol is very predictable. We can tell you exactly when we want to see you and what you're going to be doing each time. on the backside, there's quite a bit of more logistics, even more so than in a standard or traditional trial. So just in summary, I'm very enthusiastic about this kind of approach because it does offer us the first of what will hopefully be many out-of-the-box ways of looking at problems that we have been looking at for a long time. For myself, almost 30 years, and for many others as well, quite a long time. So the platform trial is a template that has worked in other settings, particularly cancer therapies. It lends itself very well to flexibility in terms of adding a new drug to be tested. We can get it up and running and put into the repertoire of drugs to be tested quickly. And so I'm very enthusiastic and hopeful that we'll move forward with these efforts. So I don't want to extend my time, and I certainly want to hear the questions that you have to ask as well, either about our program here, how we do things differently, or the platform trial. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much again for the opportunity.
This was fantastic. What a great introduction to the program. Thank you. And always great to get to know the site team and see, you know, who would be, you know, involved if anyone is interested in contacting Loma Linda. Obviously, there's a great team on the ground. And that was actually a great presentation and introduction. And perhaps we can move to the next slide to show the enrollment numbers for this week, which is something that we always love to do. Again, this is a trial where we are testing 4 drugs. Over 600 individuals have already signed informed consent. Almost 500 have now been assigned to any of the 4 regimens that we are testing, and 444 have been assigned to either active or placebo. As a reminder, the placebo ratio is very, the active to placebo ratio is very favorable in this trial, 3 to 1 in favor of active. Of those 444 people who have already been randomized within the trial to active or placebo, 135 have already finished the placebo-controlled portion of the trial. That's another great feature of the trial, where after somebody completes the placebo-controlled portion of the trial, they're offered active drug for sure for several months, essentially until we know the results of the trial. So that, you know, the trial again has different favorable features, you know, testing multiple drugs in a faster time frame, and also offering all of those generous participants who have volunteered their time in the placebo-controlled trial to really receive active drug for several months until we know the results of the trial itself. The first 3 regimens, A, B, and C, are already really moving forward really well and getting close to the finish line in terms of number of people that need to be enrolled. The target for every single regimen is 160 individuals, and you can see the A, B, and C are in the 120, almost 140 range, so really making great progress. And when we reach 160 individuals within each regimen, then all we have to do is to follow those individuals, the last few who have been enrolled, for 6 months, and after that we will be able to know if drugs A, B, and C are successful or not. Regimen D is also enrolling very well. It just started 6 months later, so not in the first group of regimens, and that's the only reason why they have little less than 50 participants. But again, I'm sure they will catch up very soon. Moving to the next slide. So here, these are the contact information. This is the contact information for Catherine and Allison, who are also joining us on this trial. They are our patient navigator team. They're always available to answer questions or emails about the trial. Next slide. And I just want you to know and remind you that we have a really great set of webinars planned. We really love to have guest speakers from the sites. That's the schedule. We are in contact with many other site investigators. So over the next few weeks, over the summer, we will really have a tour around the country and then getting to know all the different sites and really get a sense of all the different clinics, which is really great. And I see that Dr. Rosenfeld has also posted, or actually we can post for everyone, the contact for Loma Linda. So again, as we get to know the sites and the coordinators, we will be able to really also provide you additional information about how to contact each site. And we're still preparing the biostatistics webinar series, but we will probably get started with that in September. So with that, I think we can take questions, and I see Dr. Cudkowicz has joined us, so I'll let her moderate the Q&A portion of this webinar.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it's good to see a lot of people back here. I've been on the vacation for last couple weeks. So I'm sorry I've missed these, but anyways, good to be back. And Jeff, thank you for coming. It's fantastic. Please, if people have questions, to put them in the Q&A. We have one so far. And Jeff, if you want to answer this, that's fine. Or Sabrina, it's during the open label extension, are there continuing prohibitions on drugs that are part of other trials, such as TUDCA and sodium phenylbutyrate?
Yeah, so I can answer from the coordinator side. Yes, but more than yes, there's a reason why. We get this question a lot. That is, why shouldn't I just take it if it could potentially help me? And I certainly understand that philosophy. The challenge is, though, what if there is what if the study drug actually works, but there's an interaction with something else you're taking so that it doesn't work as well, or you get a side effect? Then we wouldn't know the difference. We wouldn't know if, in fact, the study drug is really beneficial or is it a safety issue. So we need, for the purpose of getting a clear answer, there has to be some regulation or control into what else you're taking so that there's not the potential for either inactivating a drug that we're testing or interacting with the drug to give you an adverse side effect. So it's important that we control the things. Now, in the case of phenylbutyrate and TUDCA, there's a second issue, and that is if either one or both of those together is beneficial, then how would you attribute the benefit that you receive from one drug you're taking from another? And from your point of view as a patient, you might say, I don't care. If I get a benefit, I get a benefit. And I certainly empathize with that. However, it doesn't help us move forward to know if the drug you're taking, either the phenylbutyrate or the study drug, is of benefit by itself. And ultimately, we're trying to make lasting differences in the therapeutic landscape and not just kind of educated guesses. So I guess that's a long answer to say, yes, the open label still does restrict what other drugs you can take, as far as I know, in all of the regimens.
Thank you. So a couple more questions have come in. So Sabrina, because you're the lead for regimen A, there's a question, is the COVID vaccine safe for people taking regimen A? Maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Yes, we have discussed that with the company, and absolutely it's safe. There's no reason to think that there will be an interaction.
Thank you. And then maybe also, Sabrina, if you could answer this, how long will the open label extension last for regimen D?
Yeah, so technically speaking, we initially wrote the protocol to say 6 months, but now we're amending it to say that it can continue. So, so essentially, we're working towards prolonging that so that it can be available longer than originally planned.
And Jeff, if you want, if there's a question about the criteria for the entry, I know there's a lot of them, but if you wanted to go over maybe the high points, and then we can put in the link, maybe a link to the web where it is on the website.
Right. So, you know, all trials, this is our most popular question that we get is, why do you exclude anyone in the trial? And I understand that question. And I think the short answer is that when you have a certain amount of time to look for a difference, if a difference exists, in the case of the platform trial, it's like 6 months. So if you need to see a difference in 6 months, you want somebody who will be at a certain stage of their disease at the start of that 6 months. Because if you took somebody who is extremely advanced or somebody who was very early on that perhaps didn't have many symptoms, you might not necessarily detect the difference if it were existing. So things like your breathing capacity is very important. How long have you had the disease? That's very important. Those are, in my estimation, the two most significant variables that we're often balancing. It isn't that we are favoring one patient population or subpopulation over another, or that we think the drug will only work for patients that have a vital capacity at a certain level. It's 100% to do with the logistics of detecting a difference if a difference is there. And so that's something that a lot of patients are disheartened about. And so that opened up to the other question that I saw about expanded access, and perhaps Sabrina's more on top of where we are with that than I am, but that's the reason where that movement has come, because in patients that aren't otherwise eligible for the trial, in selected circumstances, sometimes that drug is available. But once the drug becomes approved, then it's open for everybody. We saw that with Radicava, that Radicava was actually quite restrictive in who they enrolled in the trial that led to the approval of Radicava. But once the FDA approved it, they approved it for everybody. And I was pleased to see that, in the sense that they could have just said, we're only going to approve it for the same types of patients that were studied in the trial, but the FDA did not. They said everybody's okay to take this if they want it with that diagnosis. So I expect that trend would continue with any of the platform drugs, should they go to approval.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's a nice segue to the question about expanded access. Thank you. So Sabrina, maybe someone's asking, where are we on expanding the expanded access?
Yeah, so certainly expanded access is one of our first priorities, really. We really want to expand this to more drugs, more sites. I know many sites are interested, and so we are working on that. So we are literally about to start enrolling for the first set of EAPs, or expanded access programs, that are being set up as a companion to the platform trial. That will be for regimen B or Verdiperstat, and that's going to be available at 3 sites. I anticipate that we're going to have the first patients in July, and then we are, kind of in rapid fire. We are going to start with the clean and pre-Lenya ones as well. So again, that's right now it's a small group of patients, but we're working on fundraising and ways to increase that option. The other thing that's important, and we'll discuss that on July 22nd when Dr. Bedlak also comes here as a guest speaker. We are with him. We are also developing a set of resources and templates to make it easier for others to start similar programs. So the idea is to launch this EAP program, but also help others launch more.
Thank you. There's a question about whether there's anything that we, PALs and CALs, can, or you or us, can do to improve enrollment. 627 is a great number, but it's only 10% of those diagnosed in the last year, which is a good point. I know, Sabrina, if you want to answer first, and then Jeff, I'd love your thoughts as well.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great point, and you're right. We really want to improve that percentage of people that can have access. That's why we have some initiatives, including the patient navigation team, and obviously including more sites. We're going to be adding more sites. I had to say at this point, really with the platform trial, we created a lot of slots, but the real the bottleneck is a little bit at a site capacity level, in terms of we need to continue to provide more resources to the sites, and sites need to increase their staffing to be able to enroll more. I know everyone really wants to do this, and everyone is trying to as hard as possible. I don't know, Jeffrey, if you have thoughts from.
No, I very much the same. At our center here, I try to have something research-wise available to every patient. It might be a biomarker trial. It might be there's a variety of different kinds of trials, but it does happen that a trial of interest to a particular patient is not available to that patient. So I think recruitment is limited by 2 things. You're not eligible, or you're not interested. And I think that's probably true in most centers. Now, there's a lot of reasons to not be interested in a trial. Research is not for everybody. It does take a little bit of extra commitment on the part of the patient and the family. Not a huge amount in this trial, but there are some extra visits, and there's a little bit more accountability, because we're watching everything that happens to you while you're taking the drug. So not interested, I understand. Not eligible, we've talked about before, and perhaps with the expanded access, that will become less of an issue. But I think the biggest barrier, if you will, in recruitment is awareness. And more patients that are aware, more patients will be asking us about the trial, as many do now for the platform trial, and more we will enroll. So this is that's another advantage of the platform trial. With new drugs coming on, the new regimens being added, we have new slots. So I don't expect this trial to end in any time in the foreseeable future. And that is not like what we have done with most all drugs, where we enroll for a certain period of time, and then we sit with our hands folded while we're collecting data, waiting for an answer perhaps a year or two. And as you just heard from Sabrina, that we may have an answer to some of these regimens as soon as 6 to 8 months from now, maybe 8 months from now, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know we're coming close to 5:30, but we have 4 questions, so we'll go through them rapid fire. One of them I'm going to take because it has to do with Lou Gehrig's Day. So we had Lou Gehrig's Day, and there was a number of fundraising efforts. MLB, Yankees, did they potentially fund HEALEY and/or the expanded access? How did that pan out? So first, I want to say thank you because there were a group of people with ALS who nominated the HEALEY expanded access program to be one of the MLB, like the 31st team, and that was a huge honor for us. And that did raise so far, I think, about $25,000. Next week, they're auctioning off this NTF, which I had no idea what an NTF was before this, of Lou Gehrig's speech. And so that might, and that's going to go to 3 different groups. So thank you for that. I think next year, I think there's a lot of fundraising locally for many of those research groups. So I think this is just going to grow every year, the awareness and fundraising. So it's really phenomenal. So there's a question. My wife is enrolled at Temple. We love the team. That's so awesome to see. We'll have to have them here. She's enrolled in Regimen C and hopes to see benefits. We're only a few weeks in, but encouraged. My wife's question is, based on past studies, are benefits seen as lasting? And I think that's probably for maybe for drugs in general. So I don't know, Sabrina, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, that's the goal here, to see if, you know, what's the impact of these drugs. I would say that in general, if we think of a neuroprotective drug, and we think of all these drugs that we're testing as potentially neuroprotective, the idea would be to provide long-lasting effects, because again, we are basically providing protection to the nerve cells. Yeah.
So we have a nice comment that our guest speaker is very caring, and we know that. So he's phenomenal. Even if he says he's so young looking for being in the field so long. So what happens if someone in the HEALEY trial responds to one of the treatments? Do they get switched to open label? Sabrina, if you want.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's more time-based. So after 6 months of participating in the placebo controlled trial, regardless of whether somebody was on active or placebo, they are offered the option to enter the open label extension. And so they will continue on that drug. It's kind of time-based, not so much response-based.
If you're enrolled, how frequently will your medical records from your treaters be obtained as part of the trial? No, Jeff, if you want to answer that.
I'm not sure I understand. The medical records obtained, meaning what? Perhaps I'm.
From from their regular neurologist, like do you see them from the regular?
Oh, okay.
If they're not
yours. Okay, I see. So the data that we collect as part of the trial is collected at the trial site. So if you have a regular neurologist who's perhaps seeing you for your routine care, and then you're going to a trial site, which are also clinics that see patients, but not get your care at that site, it's perfectly reasonable. I have one patient that was doing that for a while. We don't actually have your regular neurologist collecting any data from you. All of the things we need to record as part of the trial, we record. Now, I talked to the other neurologist when the other patient was going, because I try to coordinate the care. And if I see things that would benefit that person, I try to make sure their treating doctor knows. But ultimately, that individual moved her care to our center. So that turned out to be easier and more convenient. But to answer your question, we don't rely on the outside neurologist that you might also be seeing to send any records to us for the trial.
Thank you. And then the last question, which is a great question, which is, I'm so happy that you tell all your patients about clinical trials. Not all the clinics do that. Do you have any advice on how we get every ALS clinic to mention research when new patients show up? And Jeff, maybe you can answer that. It's a phenomenon.
Well, it's a hard answer because, you know, as much variability as there is amongst the patient population, there's similar variability amongst neurologists. And most neurologists that run multidisciplinary centers like the ones we've been speaking about, and perhaps like the ones you go to, they are physicians that are oriented towards research efforts. But not every community physician is oriented towards research efforts. So, and some of it's just logistics. It takes more personnel, it's labor intensive. You have to be familiar with research methods. There's a lot of reasons why a physician doesn't participate in research. My suggestion, understanding your question, would be if research is of interest to you as a patient, find a local site. Rather than try to convert your community site to become a research site, find a research site. You can still maintain your care at your local neurologist. As I mentioned, I had a patient that went to 2 places for a while. Research centers are difficult to turn on a dime. It's not common in private practice. It happens, but it's not common because it takes so much more resource that a university is more adept at that kind of infrastructure. So I don't know that we need to convert more centers. We just need to make patients more aware of where their resources are.
Oh, Merit, you're muted.
No, sorry, I'm muted. Thank you for joining us, Jeff. Thank you, everybody, for coming today.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to seeing you
My
next
pleasure.
week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.